Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our third and last webinar. I'm Sangeeta Vasani, Family Support Practitioner at Brent Specialist Academy Trust. Today's webinar focus is on behaviour. So we have Emily Williams, our Head of Inclusion, and she will be answering questions sent in by parents. Before we start, please be aware that all participants' audio and video will be muted and hidden. You will only see and hear Emily and me. This webinar will be recorded, but be assured only Emily and I will be visible and audible. Your names will not be displayed. We will try and do the direct chat only available to Emily at the end if we have time. So yeah, should we make a start?
Yeah, let's do it.
So our first question is, my child keeps asking repeatedly for things until he gets them. What can I do? He doesn't understand the word no.
Okay, well, this is a very common question, and I think it's worth just reminding ourselves that nobody likes to be told no. Nobody likes to hear the word no. So it's a very normal thing. But as we grow up, we all need to learn to tolerate the word no and to accept when we can't have the things that we want or the things that we've asked for. So really it's something that we have to teach our children. It's a skill that they need to learn. And this can be particularly difficult for children with special educational needs who are just finding their voice. And now they're able to ask for the things that they want, and they're able to communicate for the things that they want, and that's really exciting for them. And now they're having to accept that they can't always have them. So that's, particularly difficult for them. The most important thing with this one is actually that as the adults, we need to change our own behaviour. It's important that when we say no to a child, that means no. And that engaging in problem behaviour or repetitively asking for that item isn't going to change our minds and isn't going to change the outcome. Because otherwise what's going to happen is the child will learn that actually when I ask for something, I don't get it. But if I engage in this problem behaviour, or if I keep nagging and keep asking over and over again, then eventually I'm going to get what I want. So first of all, first tip is when you've said no, you really need to stick by that. Now you can do a couple of things to take the edge off a little bit. So first of all, you could offer an alternative. So you could say to the child, no, you can't have that right now, but you could have this instead, and offer an alternative. Something else that they like. Maybe it doesn't have to be quite as much as that thing, but something else that they like. So that it's not so difficult for them to accept that they can't have that thing. Another thing that you could do is provide some information about when they can have it. So for some children, you might just need to explain that actually, no, you can't have that right now, but after we've had dinner, you can have it then. Or we're not going to do that today, but let's have a look on the calendar. Look, let's put it on Thursday. We're going to do it on Thursday. And that's going to help them accept that they can't have it right now, but understand that it is going to come at some point in the future. And finally, another thing that you can do is maybe just redirect them back to what they should be doing or what they were doing before. So if they've asked for something and you've said no, and they keep asking, just say, let's go back and do what we were doing before, and just stop talking about that thing and try and get them to go back to what they were doing and redirect them to that. So that's the advice that I would give for children that are not accepting no. But it really is about the adult changing their behaviour around that word and making sure that when they've said that, it really does mean it.
Yeah, I've had some parents say that when they have tried to do this, sometimes they get really aggressive behaviour. What do you think they could do to kind of help with that?
Yeah, well, often you see when something that normally works for us doesn't work, we'll try something different. So, for example, if a child has asked for something using a word or a sign or a symbol, and they haven't got the response from the adult that they want, they will then try other behaviours to try and get that thing. And you may see a sort of escalation in behaviours, and sometimes that leads to more aggressive behaviours or high risk behaviours. And if those behaviours ultimately end in the child getting access to that item, it's likely that those behaviours are going to happen again in the future. So again, it's really, really important that you remain consistent when you've said no. And those behaviours do not allow access to what it was that they wanted. But I also think on this one, it's important just to think a little bit about safety. Because for some children, especially children when they're older or they're bigger or stronger, or if the environment isn't safe, so for example there may only be one adult around to support that child with other children in the environment as well, it may not be safe to follow through with that. So we do need to think about safety, and for those children we may need to think about a slightly different approach. So if you feel confident that you can follow through with that, that's great. You know, be confident that when you've said no, it means no. But if you feel that the behaviour that you're seeing is actually very dangerous or high risk, and you're worried that somebody's going to get hurt, then you really need to come and talk to us, and we can try and help you through that and find a slightly different way to help manage that situation. Because it is still a skill that everybody is going to need to learn eventually.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Our next question is, my child engages in problem behaviour all the time to get my attention. Yeah.
Another one that I hear a lot. Now I think it's really, really, really important to realise that wanting attention is normal, and it's important for us as humans to have contact with those that we care about and that we like. And you know, it's part of being human, so it's absolutely normal for your child to want your attention, you know, especially the attention of their caregivers, their parents, their siblings, their friends. So I think what you need to ask yourself in this situation is, why is it a problem? Why has this become a problem? And often it's one of the following things. It might be that the child is asking for attention in the wrong way. So they're doing things that you don't like to get your attention, but actually, you know, if they asked you in an appropriate way, that would be absolutely great. It might be that they're doing it too much, so they need your attention all the time, and you just can't have a minute to yourself. Or it might be that they're doing it in the wrong time. So for example, when you're in the middle of a phone call, they always seem to want to get your attention when you're in the middle of a phone call. So it's very, very likely that they're missing a skill in their repertoire. They're missing something that, you know, we need to help teach them. So for example, if a child is asking for attention in the wrong way, they might be doing silly things around the house, or even engaging in problem behaviour that you don't like. That's when we need to teach them how to ask for attention appropriately. So one of the things that we will often do, and this is great for all children, is just teach them to walk up to an adult and tap them on the shoulder. So that they know that if they want that adult's attention and that adult is busy, they can just walk up to them and tap them on the shoulder. And that's a really simple response that most children can do. We teach that by setting up a situation where the adult has something the child really wants but isn't looking at them. They're still very close to them, maybe sat next to them almost, but they're not looking. And then we just get another adult to support. And when the child looks like they really want to take that item from the adult, we just prompt them to tap them on the shoulder. And then we'll turn around and say, yeah, what do you want? And then and give them the iPad. So they're you know, they're learning that if I tap somebody on the shoulder, I'll get their attention, and then I can ask for what I want in an appropriate way, or I can just get their attention in an appropriate way. And we'd start that really close to the child, and then we'd slowly move away within the same room, so they're having to travel further distances to get attention, and then potentially moving out of the room as well, so they have to move through different rooms in the house to get attention. If the child is seemingly wanting your attention too much, it might be that they don't have other ways of entertaining themselves. So they don't really have many independent play or leisure skills, and they need somebody to keep them entertained and to keep them interested. So in this situation, you'd want to try and start building on those play and leisure skills. And it does take a long time. You need to start initially quite short periods of time, but then slowly building up the amount of time that they can just sit and do an activity on their own, which will allow you to have a little bit more time to get the dinner on, or do the washing, or you know, something for yourself. If they're asking at the wrong time, I often get parents that say they always seem to want my attention when I'm in the middle of a phone call. I'm sure that's the same for many parents. Then you want to set up opportunities to practice, so you can make some fake phone calls, and when you're on the phone and the child comes up to you, redirect them to something really clear that you want them to do instead. So back to the toy that they were playing with, or back to do something, watch the TV, and tell them that you'll speak to them afterwards. And then at that point, you just want to try to give as little attention as possible, keep kind of directing them calmly back to what they should be doing, and carry on with your pretend phone call. And when your phone call is finished and they are engaged in something different, then go over to them and give them lots of attention, lots of praise for allowing you that short moment of time to focus on something different. So most of the time, when we want to reduce some form of challenging behaviour, there is a positive behaviour that we want to teach instead.
Okay, that sounds really good. Our next question is, my child will pee in places other than the toilet.
Yeah. How frustrating.
Very.
Especially if your child, you know, for the most part is toilet trained. That can be extremely frustrating, and difficult as well, because, you know, you're having to clean up, and, you know, really difficult one. And it can happen for a variety of reasons. First of all, it might be easier for the child to go to the toilet around the house. It might be that you need to have a look at your toilet environment and check that it's accessible to your child. Is the door always open so they can walk in? Do they need a step? You know, is the toilet bowl too high and actually it's a bit uncomfortable for them, so you need a step or something that they can rest their feet on while they're sitting on the toilet? Because really you need to be comfortable and stable when you're going to the toilet. Our occupational therapy team can always help with this and give you some suggestions, and you could always send them a photo and they'll let you know whether there's anything that you might want to tweak. Are they able to remove their clothes appropriately? Because if they're not able to remove their clothes very easily on their own, then it's probably just easier to go somewhere else, or go in their underwear or in their clothes. So that might be something that you need to practice. Another reason why it often happens is whether your child may be engaged in something that they're really enjoying and they just don't want to leave it. So they've got two choices. They can carry on playing with the activity, or they can stop playing and go to the toilet, which probably isn't going to be as fun for them. So this is always quite a big one. Have a look and see if you can see a pattern. Does it always happen when they're playing with their favourite toy, or if they're out in the garden and the toilet is quite far away, so it's quite a long way for them to go? And then make sure that if this is the case, that you do remind your child to use the toilet when they're using those activities. Demonstrate that after they've been to the toilet, they can return directly to it, and give them lots of praise and reinforcement for using the toilet when they do. And then you need to think a little bit about a consequence. So if they're playing with their favourite toy and they go to the toilet, are they able to keep playing with it for a little while? Or do you just quickly whip off their clothes and put some new clothes on and they carry on playing? If so, you might need to make that consequence a little bit more strong for them. So show them that if they've wet themselves in the wrong place, or they've gone to the toilet in the wrong place, you know, they need to either help you clean it up, or they need to help you get themselves changed. Or maybe it means that there's a short break from playing with that activity. So the consequence for weeing other than in the toilet is greater than just carrying on and playing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I've also had parents talk to me about poo in the same way that their child will only do a poo in their nappy. So,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah. Um,
it's similar in that sense.
yeah, it is similar, and often children do learn to urinate on the toilet before they learn to defecate on the toilet. But other children just kind of maybe get into a bit of a routine or habit of maybe going urinating on the toilet but not wanting to defecate on the toilet, and it can be quite a strong habit to break. So one of the things that we do is, if the child is still in nappies, if they are still using nappies, we'll start by changing their nappies, making sure they're being changed in the toilet. So they are starting to associate that process with the toilet environment, and showing them that once you take off the nappy, the poo goes into the toilet and flushing it. And then when we're doing that, we'll be practicing having the child sitting on the toilet, and again making sure that the toilet environment is appropriate and comfortable for the child. Practicing sitting on the toilet for long periods of time, so up to sort of around 10 minutes. We'll start very short with maybe 1 minute, build up to 2 minutes, and get the child used to coming in and just sitting on the toilet. We'll also ask parents to record the pattern of when their child goes to the toilet. So if it's always happening at a similar time of day, that's when we'll say, okay, now your child is comfortable sitting on the toilet. Let's go at that time every day and sit there for a prolonged period of time and see if we can catch that opportunity and provide that child with reinforcement for using the toilet appropriately. Sometimes it's really useful to identify a really, really strong reinforcer, something the child really, really likes, and just having it available for when they use the toilet. So they don't have it any other time, so it becomes a really special one, a toilet treat, you could say. And you just give it to them when they've used the toilet to really reinforce that that's what we want to see. Some children will really benefit from some kind of visuals for their toileting, or a social story, which helps them understand the process. And some of those stories can be quite fun. You can buy them online, or you can speak to our speech and language therapists, and they can bespoke make you a story for your child.
Yeah, no, that's great.
And I just think it's so important, this skill. It's really important that the children become autonomous in using the toilet, because they are going to get older, they are going to become adults. We really don't want them to be reliant on this type of personal care into adulthood.
Yeah, and it can take a while at times, but like you say, if you start with just finding out which times, like having a timetable of when they must go, then you can remind them and start there.
It could be so time consuming to be going to the toilet every half an hour, and we do that when we're teaching children to urinate on the toilet. But we don't often go to the poo that much.
Yeah.
So it's better to do a schedule and figure out if there is a pattern, because that's going to help you save time while you're working on this.
Okay, great. So our next question is, how do I stop my child being aggressive?
Okay, yeah. Well, I think, at school, what we try to do is we try to avoid sort of blanket approaches for certain behaviours. So rather than saying, well, when the child kicks us, we'll do this, or when the child bites us, we'll do this, what we want to do is we want to think about why that behavior is happening, and how it is functioning or working for the child, because it's likely to be helping the child in some way get a need or a want met. So obviously, if a child isn't following adult demands, we're going to respond in a different way to a child that doesn't like stopping their favorite activity, or a child that struggles in situations where there's lots of sensory stimulation. So we may see the same behaviors in all of these situations, but they're for very different reasons. And that's the key, really. The key is, in that moment, identifying, why is this happening now? And being a little bit of a detective, to try and kind of figure out, why do they keep doing it? And then again, it kind of comes a little bit into changing your behavior and how you react to that behavior. If you think that your child is engaging that behavior because they want to get your attention, we want to stop giving them attention for that behavior. And as soon as they've stopped, as soon as we've had a little bit of a break, we teach them how to tap our arm instead. So they can still have that, but they just can't have it for that behavior. If a child is struggling to follow simple demands, and we all do need to follow some simple demands in our day-to-day life, are we, have a think about it. Do we give in when the child engages in a certain behavior? So actually it might be just about remaining calm and just giving it a little bit more time and just blocking that behavior, and then just encouraging your child, continuing to encourage your child to complete what they've been asked. And if it's a child that struggles maybe to interrupt an activity that they like, have a think. When they do that, do you let them have a little bit longer with it? So you need to sort of think about, okay, well, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to take that item away, and then I'm going to help my child move on to something different. So normally these behaviors are some form of communication or a way of the child getting what they want. So it's really important to identify why it's happening, and is there another skill that we can teach instead that would be more appropriate and safer. And again, I just want to say that for any aggressive behaviors, high risk behaviors, self-injurious behaviors, it's really important to think about safety. And if you think that these behaviors are too dangerous for you to manage or could really hurt somebody, that's when you need to get in contact with us, and we can help you through that and maybe think of it of a different way.
All right, thank you. So our next question is, my child climbs and jumps and runs all over the house. How can I stop this?
Okay. Many parents struggle with this, and it can be quite disruptive to day-to-day life, and you probably feel like you need to have eyes in the back of your heads. I think the first question I would ask is, how does my child play? Do they have any activities that they like to sit down and do? What are their play skills like? Because again, it might be that this is a problem with actually not having any independent or play or leisure skills. So they're doing what they enjoy, which is running around, jumping around, and activity is extremely reinforcing. I think one of the biggest hobbies for adults as we grow up is exercise. So of course it's going to be exciting and fun for the children as well. So it might be that you need to start thinking about teaching some calmer activities. So thinking about sitting down for very short periods of time with an activity, and then building up that time so that they can sit again for a little bit longer and give you a bit of time where you know that they're safe and calm to do what you need to do. And you might want to do that by pairing some of those activities with something that they really like. So maybe getting the Lego blocks out, but also having some music on if they like music, and building while we listen to music, or maybe building while we have snack time. So it's something that they enjoy. And that's going to maybe increase their motivation to engage with that activity a little bit. But don't worry if it, you know, at the beginning you can only sit down for a minute or less than a minute. Just take that as your baseline, and then the next day and the next day keep practicing, and you'll see some improvement. When you're choosing your activities, make sure they're fun and functional and easy for the child to do. Because nobody wants to sit down and spend time doing something that's really difficult for us. So make sure it's something that you know that they can do. You might want to try and make these this interest in physical activity more appropriate. So teaching them, we're not going to jump here, we're not going to climb here, but you can do it in the garden, or you know, you can do it when we listen to this song about jumping, and just blocking that behavior quite consistently, so they learn that that isn't available to them, but they can go and do it here instead. We at school, we really recommend having those mini trampolines where children can safely get the physical input that they need. You can also practice things like dancing to action songs, or doing some children's yoga videos. You can find all of these online. And these are activities where the child is still being physical, they're still getting out that energy, but they're doing it in a more controlled, safe way. And if you're lucky enough to have a garden, get out there and play some chase or ball games in the garden, and demonstrate that we can play those games outside, but we can't play them inside. If possible, you know, if your child does seem full of energy, try and get outside and go for a walk, or do some short visits to the park throughout the week, and try and expend some of that energy. And then, like, finally, the other thing I would suggest is getting in contact with your class's OT, because there might be specific activities that they can suggest for your child that are really personalised, that could help. Or they might be able to find a way that we can bring in some occupational therapy resources and activities into the games that they like, which means that a sit-down game, a simple sit-down game, could become, you know, really physical if the children are using tongs, or they're using putty and there's things hidden in them. They're really using their bodies still, but in a calmer way. So our occupational therapists have got lots of ideas and can help you with that.
That's ideas there.
I'm just going to turn on the chat function now. I think we've probably got a few questions to go, so we'll carry on answering questions, but I will also turn on the chat function as well.
Okay, that's fine. All right, so next one is, my child engages in challenging behaviour when we go outside of the house, and we now stay in a lot of the time. What can we do?
Yeah, I really appreciate how hard this must be for families, and I really worry about how isolated families can feel when they're unable to take their children out into the community. And, you know, not just even the community, they might struggle to take them out to their families' houses, or, you know, to family events, and that can be really isolating and difficult. I've worked with families that have reported all sorts of behaviours out in the community that are difficult to manage. Children having tantrums, flopping on the floor, running away, screaming. So there's a big range of things, you know, that can happen out there that you could find difficult. The first thing you need to think about is safety. When you're going out into the community, do you feel that you can manage this behaviour safely? Because I would hate to suggest that you go out and you work on these behaviours in the community and actually it isn't safe for you. So think about how safe you are, because if you don't feel safe taking your child out into the community, then we can help. Speak to us. You can contact Angela, our safeguarding lead, our deputy head. Sangeeta here, you know, our family support practitioner. You go on lots of visits, don't you, with families, and you go out to the community with them.
we do that.
And myself and the inclusion team can also do that to help you. So you don't need to go through this alone, especially if you are alone and you don't have a partner, a friend, a family member that can go out with you. Because that would be my first tip, is to take someone with you when you're practicing these skills, so that you've got support, that you feel that things start to go wrong, you've got someone there to help you out and back you up, or just give you that moral support that you might need when you're out in the community. So again, similarly to before, it's a little bit about thinking about why this behaviour is happening out in the community. What is the reason for it? It could be that the child gets bored when they go out, that actually they're doing a lot of things for you, going shopping and going to the places that you want, and not really getting a lot of things for them. So they're just getting a little bit bored, or the outings are going on for a little bit longer than usual, and their normal toys or activities aren't there. It could be that they don't like waiting. So when you get into a queue, you start waiting, and that's when it becomes a problem. It could be that they want something when they see it, and they go to the shop and they see something that they want, and they can't have it until they paid for it, or they just simply can't have it at all. So they need to accept that they can't always have what they want. So there's lots and lots and lots of different reasons why they might be engaging in challenging behaviour. So a few top tips, and again, for more personalised advice, Sangeeta or my team, can really have a think about what it might be for your child that's causing difficulty. But think about preparing your child for the trip. So telling them where they're going, maybe sharing a symbol or a picture. If you're going and doing something that you want to do, maybe building in something that they want to do at the end. And I definitely try and keep it to the end, because if you go and do the thing, go to the toy shop before the food shop, once they've got their toy, you might then struggle to keep them engaged during the food shop. So think about the order in which you're doing things. If you're going to be waiting, if you're going to the doctors or the dentist, take some toys with you, some little things that you can carry in your handbag that that the child will like. And I know that some parents will use their phones as well, because it is something that will keep your child engaged, and it's definitely something that I use when I'm waiting. And obviously we know we don't want children to have too much screen time, but these short bursts of it can be really useful for you and getting you out into the community. Keep the trip short if possible, and if they're really struggling with going out into the community, practice. So go out a little bit more often than you would, rather than a little bit less than you would. It's a skill that children need to learn, and the only way that we learn skills is by practicing. So if it's safe, go out and practice it, and do little trips to different shops, and take someone with you, so you've got moral support. Sangeeta might be able to come with you, or one of my team, so let us know. And it might also be something that we can work on in school. And also I think that sometimes it's also about not feeling very confident or worried what people are going to think when those behaviours happen. So be calm and confident. Your child is learning something, and that's okay. And you're there to do the best for your child in that moment. And it might educate somebody watching that happen, and showing them how difficult it is for some people, and learning, what it takes really to support children with SEN in the community. And you can get some resources, like the National Autistic Society do a I am autistic card, which you can sort of hand out, which just gives a little brief explanation of why something might be happening if you can't speak to somebody at that point. Or there's some lanyards, hidden disability sunflower lanyards that you can wear to identify that that there might be a hidden disability there, to help build awareness. Because I think in general, my experience when I've been out with children is people want to help, or they're interested in or they're thinking, oh, that's different, I've not seen that before. And it's not always immediately a negative response from them, although it could feel that way, I think, you know, when you're in that situation. I do just have had a question through from a parent, so I think maybe I'll answer that one and then go back to any that you've got.
Okay, no worries.
Okay, so the question is that my child seems to be content with playing by himself, and I want my child to learn to play with other children and also make friends. So how can a parent help a child make friends? And that's definitely I think a concern for a lot of our parents. I think first of all, you know, it's great if your child is happy playing by themselves, that's okay. But what, you know, in order to make friends, again, he's going to need to learn quite a lot of new skills. We often find with children that they prefer attention and playing with adults, especially at first. And I think that is because the adult is there purely for them. We're there to meet their needs. We're there to give them as fun time as possible. We've probably got all of their toys and we're the one that gives it to them. And so you can see why, you know, having an adult around is great. And it's a good place to start, and building really positive relationships with the adults and learning to play with the adults around us. And learning that social interaction is valuable. And, you know, when I do interact with people socially, you know, my world gets a bit better. And, you know, that can be quite difficult, especially for children with autism. They can find that quite hard and difficult to navigate. But if we start as the adults by making play fun and making social interaction fun and making sure that when children do play with us, you know, their world becomes better than when they're playing on their own, that should help. I might do that by having a box of the toys that the child really likes and just keeping them as in a box, and they only come out when I'm available. So I play with those toys only, they get to play with those toys only with me. So that then immediately makes me more fun, and a good person to be around, because I've got access to all of these fun things. And making sure that when you're playing with your child, you're not putting too many demands on them. So you're not asking them to do lots of things, you're more just following their lead and playing with them. And then when you've established that relationship, you can use it to bring in other children. So again, you could have a box or a bag of activities or toys that your child really likes, that you can share easily with another child. Things like bubbles, blowing bubbles and into the room, and the children are popping the bubbles. You know, playing water fights, or playing physical games like jumping on the trampoline, holding hands, or doing action songs together. So activity where there's very little demands on the children. So again, they're not associating being with this other child as something hard work or difficult. So they're just having fun with them. And at this point, they might not be interacting, but they're just having fun with them. So that, you know, they enjoy being around them and tolerating being around them. Then you're working on maybe them starting to share the same resources. So at first it might be that they're playing with the same activity, but separately. So they might be sitting on different sides of the table with the activity in the middle, or they might have their own tray with the activity in that's the same. So they're playing with the same thing, but they don't have to navigate sharing. Then you're going to move on to sharing. And that's when it gets a bit tricky, because that's when this child may become less fun for me. They've got what I want and they won't let me have what I want. And that's when you need the adult to come in and support it. So the adult can come in, find a really simple activity that both children can do, because you're not working on the play skills now, you're working on the social skills, and that's hard enough. You don't need to be working on a hard game as well. So pick a really easy game that they both can do and help them navigate the turn-taking activities, and keep it really short. and then go and do something fun with them afterwards, where they don't have to tolerate waiting or sharing. And you can also teach your child to ask for things from their siblings or their friends. So by simply setting it up that maybe, they both have a snack, but it's the wrong snack. And they have to ask their peer or their sibling for the snack, and then they get it. You're starting to sort of teach them that this person will be a giver, and they are going to give me the things that I want, and I can get access to things that I want through them. I remember years ago working with a family who had a teenager and two little ones, and I'm sure that's hard for any family, let alone a family who's a teenager with special needs. But he just found his brother particularly quite challenging, because he really wanted to play with him all the time, and he kept coming into his room and touching his things. So I did a lot of work sort of supporting that play and just facilitating that play, and making sure that if there was a disagreement of who had what, that I could give them the language to communicate with each other and make sure that it was resolved there and then. But I also then worked on his little brother just coming into his room at random times and just giving him something that he liked. So he'd always come in and bring him his snack. So, when rather than him coming in and this teenager thinking, oh no, he's going to come in and, he'd come in and think, oh, what's coming in? Am I, is it time for my, snack? And they became a little bit more tolerant of being with each other. So it is a long process, and it's step by step. But the most important thing, I think, is having fun and making sure that it's not too demand heavy, and actually the children can just relax and enjoy an activity at first together and have fun with it.
Nice. Do we have any more questions, or shall we?
Not at the moment. So if you want to read one of yours out, that would be great.
Okay, all right. So my child will only go to sleep in my bed, and then I have to carry him to his. How can I stop this?
Yeah. So there comes a time when a child needs to learn to soothe themselves to sleep. It's going to have a huge impact on your family and your evenings, because that's a time when it's important that you can have some time for yourself to rest and relax, and enjoy your favorite Netflix program, or do whatever it is that you want to do. So it's something that will have a really big impact on your family life and on your life. So first of all, you need to make sure that the bedroom environment is right, that it's quiet, that it's comfortable. There's no toys there that would be a big temptation for them, like specifically technology. That it's dark enough, but you've thought about a night light if you think that will help your child. And then think about your your sleep routine. So make sure that you have a clear routine that you do every night. You go to bed at the same time every night. You wake up in the morning at the same time every day. You build in maybe bath time or shower time, and maybe a story and a bit of quiet time one-to-one with you into that routine. So again, it happens every day. It's really predictable for your child. You want to limit highly energetic activities or exciting activities just before bedtime. You want to limit technology before bedtime. You want to limit any stimulants or sugary drinks that they might have before bedtime. And you want to practice that routine, and don't give up. Because it might take a little bit of time for the child to get into that routine. But if the child is getting out of bed and not settling, just calmly, quietly take them back to bed, settle them again, leave them, come back. I'm sure we've all seen the Super Nanny TV program, and at first it can be quite challenging, but it's about just being really consistent. And making sure that your child knows that you're there, and you're going to take them back, but you're not going to engage in lots of conversation at that time, and you're not going to play with them at that time, and actually it's time for bed now. So keep your interaction after you've put your child to bed to a minimum. Just be reassuring, and then put them back to bed. Yeah.
And could like a visual schedule support that?
Absolutely.
Kind of
Visual schedule, so they can see the steps, what's going to happen, make it really predictable predictable for them. Even, why not read them a story about sleep? And there's lots of lovely stories about sleep, but again, our speech and language therapist can make you one really personalized to your child. We do have a PowerPoint up on the website about sleep, and also about toileting, which we talked about earlier, on the Manor School website, and you can access that. There's some lovely resources, some visuals to go along with a PowerPoint, and a top tips sheet for you, so that will give you a little bit more information about these things.
Okay, great. So can we squeeze in one last?
Why not?
Yeah.
Why not?
So we have here, I can't cut my child's nails, help.
Yeah. So getting children to tolerate activities relating to personal care can be quite difficult. And if you really think about it yourself, it is quite unsettling having things done to your body when you're not in control, especially when that involves scissors or clippers or noisy machines. So you can see why that would be quite challenging. So the key here is practice. The more that you do an activity, the more the child is going to feel comfortable with it and safe when it happens. So practice more than you would. There's a tendency to stop doing things if they're difficult or challenging, but actually doing it more is better. Model on yourself or on a peer or a sibling, so they can see that it's okay. When I'm doing something with a child that I've never done before, a recent example was temperature. The children are having their temperatures taken when they were coming into school. So if I didn't know that child very well, I didn't know whether they'd had their temperature taken before, and they definitely hadn't by me, I'd always show them on myself first. This is what's going to happen, and so that they could see that that's okay. And we can help also by practicing at school as well. When you're practicing these things, make sure that you've got time to sit down and really, give some focus to it and not be rushed. Because it is going to be quite stressful for you and your child, and you don't want to feel that you're racing against the clock. So make sure you've got lots of time, and you can build up slowly, moving at the child's pace. So at first it might just be holding the nail clippers and having a look at them, having a feel of them and seeing it on you. Then it might just be showing him or her just putting it to the nail, and then building up just to clipping one nail. And just building up really, really slowly, and showing them that it's okay, and reinforcing that tolerating, so when they do allow something that they haven't allowed before, that they allow you to put it to their nail, and they'd never let you do that before, showing them how happy you are, praising them, and maybe listening to a song together to show their favorite song, and showing them that that's really great, and that you're really happy that they've let you do that. You can also then, if you definitely think this is going to be a problem for your child going forward, think about things that they might have to do in the future that could be difficult, and start working on them now, start practicing them now. It might be that all of a sudden your child has an ear infection and they need to have something looked at in their ear, and if that's never happened, it could be quite scary. So practice some of these things in play, get a doctor's kit, practice them before they happen, because when it does happen, it's normally quite urgent that these things are done, especially health and safety things, and doctors in doctor's surgeries, it's always quite urgent that they're done, and they need to be done to help your child get better, or to access support that they need. So practice these things in play activities before potentially they actually happen. And if it's really urgent that this is done, you know, that your child isn't very well and they do need to be examined by a doctor, and you're really worried about it, contact us, and we can try and help.
Yeah, lovely.
Yeah.
So thank you, Emily, for all your advice. And thank you everyone for joining. We have links to all our webinars on our website, so please have a look. And
yeah,
you.
and
Yeah.
you know, you've got links to us as well.
Yeah.
We've got our speech and language therapy, occupational therapy, behaviour email addresses. So please do contact us if you need anything.
Lovely. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye everyone.